The Alaska Triangle, Disappearances, and Patterned Silence. While analysts argued over echoes, people kept vanishing along the same rough lines. On paper, the Alaska Triangle is just a nickname, a big wedge of wilderness between Anchorage, Fairbanks, and the Denali Massif. In hangars and ranger shacks, it's a map with thumbtacks clustering where radios fade and tracks end. The stakes aren't abstract. There are families wading through winters and flight plans that never close. Start with the vectors everyone knows but nobody publishes. Bush strips in the Susitna lowlands, a valley west of Talkeetna, a pass north of Nenana. Search and rescue will tell you coldly that Alaska eats unprepared pilots, and they're not wrong. Weather builds a wall in minutes, downdrafts sheer wings. But then you look at the clusters, same corridors, same dead air pockets, and the explanations begin to repeat like a form letter. Get this, pilots talk in shorthand because it's how they cope. Green lace is what a freight flyer called the Aurora when it draped too low, whispering across his windshield on a clear night near Trapper Creek. He swore the hum in his headset matched the shimmer outside, a tremor that rode his VOR needle until it twitched off station. He logged it as interference because what else do you call a glow that moves your instruments? On the ground, miners mention the soil humming on still nights. You laugh until you stand over tailings and feel a faint vibration through your boots that isn't wind or water. A driller west of Cantwell keeps a compass in his pocket out of habit. Sometimes the needle drifts a few degrees and hangs there stubborn like it's listening. He shrugs and blames iron. Then he walks the same line and it happens again, only in that strip. The official stance is tidy. SAR statistics, survival rates, hypothermia curves. In briefings, y'all hear the word weather more than any other and it covers a lot. But what nobody says on the record is that tapes go missing. A ranger remembers a dispatch recording that captured a pilot's final comm call, stand by, followed by open carrier in a faint tone they couldn't pin. Weeks later, the copy they'd pulled for training was gone. The log referenced equipment fault. Meanwhile, locals trade stories like bearings. A heli operator out of Willow says there's a valley where his altimeter reads low by 200 feet only inside a narrow ribbon over a dark patch of snow. He flies it by feel now, ignoring the numbers. A snow machiner swears he watched a shadow move against a moonlit slope, slow and even like a lens drifting. When he stopped, his handheld GPS marked him a mile from where his own tracks lay. Patterns emerge if you let them. The Denali Fairbanks Anchorage corridor isn't a straight line. It's a braided river of paths where aircraft converge, terrain funnels, and radio coverage thins. Rumors mention no-fly boxes that don't show on the published charts, little rectangles pilots learn to arc around because controllers recommend it in a tone that isn't optional. Dead air pockets sit like potholes. You dip in and your comms go syrup thick, then snap back 2 miles later. You log it as terrain shielding, and maybe that's all it is. Or maybe it's a fence you can't see. Here's where the triangle earns its reputation as a perfect cover. If you needed to manage a perimeter without admitting it existed, you'd choose a place where weather hides your hand and wilderness swallows your mistakes. You'd let folklore do the heavy lifting. People already expect radios to fail and footprints to vanish in blown snow. A missing plane becomes one more cross on a map, one more family told to wait 72 hours. What nobody knew for 3 summers was how often SAR dispatches were rerouted mid-flight with coordinates replaced by standby. A volunteer pilot told me his ELT ping was acknowledged, then marked training on the log. When he pressed later, the supervisor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Clerical, he said. Days later, a temporary flight restriction went up over the same grid square for wildlife, even though everyone knew the bears were 2 valleys over. The impact on the ground is a kind of taught caution. People feel the boundary before they see it. Guides teach their teams to notch their radios down when they cross certain ridgelines, not up, because they've learned the crackle eases that way. Bush pilots add 10 minutes of fuel for the quiet stretch like a superstition. None of it makes the news. It lives in hangar talk and coffee steam, in penciled excess on photocopied maps that circulate off books. Meanwhile, the triangle keeps doing its job, absorbing blame, muting patterns, and making every anomaly look like another storm story. It's the perfect noise floor, and under that noise, a perimeter hums. HAARP's shadow cover coincidence or collaboration. While that perimeter hummed, Gakona lit up like a lightning farm. Rows of antennas on frozen ground, a tidy sign, high-frequency active auroral research program. Officially onospheric science, unofficially every rumor in the book, the timing mattered. As off-season thickness studies avoided the corridor after the 1992 echo, HAARP's build-out ticked forward, and the public gaze slid to the place with cameras on it. If you needed a visible storm to hide a quiet one, you couldn't ask for better. HAARP's schedule is public enough to look harmless, campaigns with names, visiting professors, press days. Between those, procurement notes tell a different story. A requisition for ultra-low frequency shielding on equipment that shouldn't care below HF. Hardened storage added to a site that's mostly cables and racks. Briefings to contractors that used phrases like resonance mapping with deep subsurface coupling. It's the magician's trick, show one hand, work the other. During one winter window, the array ran a pattern that looked like a tune-up, step frequencies, standard power. Meanwhile, flights with underbelly pods traced long, slow lines over snowfields 200 miles away. Call it coincidence or admit the synergy. Pump the sky, listen to the ground. The ionosphere makes a duct, VLF rides it. The Earth answers if something down there wants to sing. Public experiments, perfect deniability. Protests help. HAARP drew pickets and TV crews convinced it could steer storms and scramble mines. In that smoke, the quieter program smiled. When a firebrand yelled about weather weapons, a technician working a magnetometer out near Nenana could roll a Pelican case to a truck without anyone asking why it had a Faraday liner. The lightning rod took the hits, the ground truth stayed underground. What nobody outside the fence understood was how the operation used silence as a tool. During planned overflights near the corridor, there were quiet hours at Gakona noted as routine maintenance. On paper, the array was resting. In the field, a different transmitter, ground level, coal-driven, spun up for a narrow window. If you want to isolate a return, you kill the obvious source and light the hidden one. Later, the press log would point at the downtime like proof of innocence. Contractor briefs left crumbs. One slide deck, never published, compared ionospheric heating footprints with ground conductivity maps and highlighted a swath that overlapped uncomfortably with the Denali Fairbanks Anchorage braid. The caption read, "Anomalous coupling candidates." A line below, "Coordinate with airspace restrictions." To the uninitiated jargon, to anyone who'd stared at the 1992 Echo, a nudge that said, "We're mapping edges." Rumor versus research is where this story hides. In open journals, HAARP's work is about plasma waves, ELF-VLF generation, and radio propagation. Useful, normal, nerdy. But tucked into those same papers are methods that double as searchlights, modulating the ionosphere to inject precise ELF signatures into the ground. If you had a buried cavity tuned to a certain band, piezoelectric granites love specific tones, you might hear it respond as a phase shift miles away. Scientists call it an experiment, operators call it a survey. Meanwhile, residents near Gakona learned the site's rhythms. Lights at 3 a.m., then nothing. A glow on the horizon that washed aurora, then silence. Public flare-ups came in waves every time a storm hit or a plasma plume photo went viral. Each spike of attention gave the program cover to move parts and people. During one panic cycle, a freight company logged odd manifests, racks labeled geophysical bound for remote strip, then rerouted to a base for staging. The pallets cooled overnight inside a hangar with a sign that said weather. Here's where the collaboration theory creeps in. Was HAARP the cover or a collaborator? A few insiders say both. The array's scientists ran clean projects and published clean results. Parallel to that, a small compartment used the same infrastructure, power, security, procurement to scaffold a quieter mission. Shared calendars, different goals. On a whiteboard in a windowless room, a schedule noted no-look zone times that matched when local radar downrange reportedly lost tags. A coincidence until you map the lines. A micro-story hangs on a single sentence. A university grad student helped install a temporary VLF receiver near Paxson during a HAARP campaign. She logged an odd triplet, 3 tight tones, just before official transmissions started. She mentioned it in an email. The reply, protest artifact. She checked her notebook later and found a sticky note that wasn't hers. Don't point radar at the hole. Counterarguments stack easily. The ionosphere is complex. ELF-VLF experiments couple into the ground everywhere, not just in Alaska. People see patterns because they want stories that explain fear, all fair, and yet the logistics don't lie. Additional fuel shipments to strips with no public projects, quiet TFRs posted after the fact, contractor NDAs that mention non-ionospheric returns. If you're allergic to coincidence, the rash is hard to ignore. So HAARP became the lightning rod by design or by luck. Either way, it worked. Cameras pointed at the antennas while other instruments listened for edges far from Gakona's fence. Public science absorbed the accusations. Private tasking followed the echo. And if the array's true shadow wasn't thrown by its towers but by the stories circling them, the effect was the same. Attention bounced where it was safe. The real work stayed where it started, under ice, under silence. The hidden surveys, Lidar, magnetics, and missing data. To trace edges of stone and ice, follow the surveys that shouldn't exist. Off-season, when tourists go home and daylight is short, twin-engine birds with unmarked belly pods stitched grids across valleys nobody had charted since the pipeline days. The pilots filed science call signs tied to universities you'd recognize. The gear didn't look academic. Pods wore matte paint, no company plates, with vents that suggested active cooling. They flew low and slow. the way you do when you're collecting something sensitive that hates altitude. A field hand remembers one winter out of Fairbanks, climbing into a de Havilland beside a crate marked Lidar forest canopy. He laughed because there weren't trees where they were going. The operator smiled like that was the joke. On the screen, the returns looked normal until they didn't. A smooth ground profile, then 3 adjacent voids where the lasers acted like they'd hit glass. Snow doesn't do that, ice can if it's clean and thick. But when they reran the line from the opposite heading, the voids formed a pattern, angles meeting at angles, like the edges of a buried roof. Meanwhile, across town, a university team borrowed a magnetometer array from a mining outfit. They said they were calibrating against known basalt dikes. The field tech who helped coil the cables watched their lead swap out firmware with a thumb drive labeled with a defense contractor's logo. On the sweep, a gradient popped, a clean, repeating slope that flipped polarity in a way that suggested engineered cavities. Natural geology meanders. This sat there like a signature, steady as a heartbeat. Data whispers carry further than reports. A graduate student carried a hard drive in her backpack to a coffee shop because the lab's network was down. She showed a friend a Lidar slice with a triangle of absence under a thin ridge. The void was too sharp, the edges too straight. A week later, her laptop was lifted from her apartment with nothing else taken. She filed a report. The officer nodded at the door, said thefts happened. 2 days after that, her PI reminded the team that NDAs weren't technically optional. FOIAs landed like snow and melted just as fast. Requests for off-season flight plans came back with cheerful black bars and boilerplate about privacy and ongoing research. Magnetometer logs were lost due to disk corruption. A Lidar contractor's website listed a white paper due in spring, the link 404D. When someone called to ask, the receptionist apologized and transferred to compliance. The line rang until it didn't. Then came a voicemail. We appreciate your interest in glacier studies. Counterreads showed up to keep the floor level. Basalt dikes can mimic straight lines in magnetic data. Pingo's ice-cored mounds make voids that fool careless Lidar. Ice lenses create flat reflectors that slice through returns, all true. The people who'd seen the slices shook their heads. The triangles repeated across headings and seasons. The gradients aligned with no surface features. If this was a mess of nature's making, it was a mess with a ruler. A chopper crew out of Healy logged a route survey for a pipeline contingency. They carried a FLIR for wildlife. Over a wide white basin, they caught 3 snow pillars on infrared cool columns in a warmer field, then watched the footage corrupt on the SD card during shutdown. The pilot shrugged it off until maintenance pulled the card and found every other file intact. The missing clip sat as a block of zeros, like someone had formatted just the minute they needed. Unknown to them across town, a ranger tried to print a topo with a new set of coordinates he'd been given for a winter training exercise. The grid square came out black ink to the margins. He thought the printer had jammed and ran it again. Same black, he tried a different machine. Same. Later, he got a revised plan with a wildlife sensitivity buffer and instructions not to fly under 3,000 AGL in a perfectly calm valley that barely saw moose. Enforcement patterns hardened. After certain flights, NOTAMs appeared backdated by Zulu time, just enough to make a violation look like a pilot's fault. Ramp checks started focusing on handheld radios and any non-certified antennas. The tone was friendly, the eyes weren't. A Bush pilot's logbook entry about an instrument anomaly got voided after a courtesy visit from someone whose badge didn't match his jacket. He told his wife he de-imagined it. He told his mechanic he hadn't. The impact is simple. Expensive fieldwork with no publications is a classification fingerprint. You don't fly grids, rent hangars, and burn fuel for science you never show unless the science became property. The people closest to the instruments felt the door close. Email threads trailed off. Drafts vanished. Colleagues started using phrases like deferred and sponsor guidance. On the ground, locals learned to keep their heads down when unmarked pods showed up. The sky would fill with lines for a week, then go quiet like nothing had happened. Here's the quiet admission nobody will make on the record. The more modalities converged, LiDAR, magnetics, infrared, the harder natural was to defend with a straight face. Every counterexample had a point. None of them had the geometry. And geometry, clean, repeating, and stubborn, doesn't care about excuses. It sits there under ice and silt, waiting to answer when someone sings the right note. Human cost, pilots, rangers, and the map you can't get. Stakes aren't a theory up here. There are engines cooling on gravel, kids at kitchen tables, and a kind of silence that sits in living rooms like weather. Break a perimeter you're not supposed to know exists, and it doesn't just mess with instruments, it erases livelihoods. People learn fast where the air turns thick and the rules get bendy. Violate them and you don't just lose a license, you lose a way to feed your family. Start with a pilot who still flies but won't put his name to paper. Day VFR Winter Bluebird, Denali sharp enough to cut. 10 minutes west of a ridgeline he's flown since the 90s, his GPS ground speed freezes at 0. Analog airspeed stays steady. CDI needle slams left like someone yanked it. His portable Garmin disagrees by 14 nautical miles. He's checking breakers when a UHF voice cuts in, no call sign, just calm, turn now, heading 270. Maintain 85, he keys up, the carrier squashes him. ADSB uplink goes blank even as mode C shows VFR. He banks and the voice softens, good turn, maintain. Out the window his strobes catch a faint haze band like heat on snow. His magnetic heading drifts 8 to 12 degrees and wants settle. He lands rattled, maintenance finds nothing. A week later, 2 men call it a courtesy visit. His logbook entry about the freeze, administrative correction. Meanwhile, SAR dispatches drift into a gray place nobody wants to admit exists. 3 times in one season, crews were retasked mid-flight with standby replacing coordinates. One ranger swore he heard an ELT ping acknowledged on the console, then marked training on the paper log. Families were told the 96-hour clock hadn't started. A mother called every hour. The phone tree sent her in circles until the TFR went up over the grid shed written on an envelope. The NOTAM was backdated in Zulu, like the air had always been closed. Microstories pile up because that's how truth gets around a gag order. A surveyor's compass spins twice on a knoll he demarked stable last summer. He laughs until his partner's handheld sat phone dials, lights, and never rings, but shows a 5-second charge on the bill. A ski-equipped Cessna drifting over a white bowl sees snow pillars on FLIR, 3 cool shafts that shouldn't be there, then watches the SD card corrupt only that minute on shutdown. The rest of the footage plays like nothing happened. On ramps, enforcement shows its teeth with a smile. Ramp checks start asking about handhelds and any antenna that isn't blessed. Guys who fix their own avionics are suddenly popular. A jet revision arrives missing a valley waypoint everyone uses. Locals pass photocopied maps with pencil excess and coffee stains. A flyer who asks his FSDO why the fix disappeared gets a lecture about charting priorities and an email that reads like a hug with hands on your shoulders. He stops asking and adds fuel for the quiet stretch. Rangers learn a second language, how to say compliant words that mean caution. Wildlife sensitivity becomes code for don't look. Training airspace means wait for someone to call you later with real numbers. A field briefing replaces coordinates with a grid square that prints solid black on 2 different machines. They switch to grease pencils on acetate overlays passed across desks with no email trail. Then there are the nights that bite. A medevac pushes north under a green curtain and hits a pocket where radios turn to mud. They're a hearable barely until they're a not. The pilot drops 100 feet under a ridge lip for a bounce. Comms return like someone opened a tap. He files the anomaly and gets a polite call. Appreciate the note, consider alternate routing. He does. It adds 20 minutes to every flight. Careers bend around this. A ranger who kept copies of tapes in a labeled shoebox gets promoted to a job with no radio time. A pilot who talked too much finds his insurance premium spiking for risk profile adjustments. A contractor who joked about edges is told his badge won't work next season. They're not fired, they're moved. The message is cleaner that way. Impact lands where maps should be. There's a chart you can't get, the one with the real holes. Instead you get folklore, photocopies, and a sense in your bones that the air itself has a boundary. People obey it because they've learned what happens when you don't. And the perimeter keeps humming, polite as a voice on UHF saying, turn now. Pyramids as machines, mechanisms, and motives. To grasp why a buried pyramid would matter to anyone with a budget and a badge, you have to treat pyramids not as tombs but as machines. Across cultures, builders chased angles with a stubbornness that makes more sense if geometry did work. Chambers tuned like instruments, stones that rang when struck. If form followed function, the function wasn't funerary pride, it was resonance. Here's the working idea. A pyramid's shape focuses vibrations. Inside stone, tiny crystals, quartz and granite squeeze under stress and spit out charge, then relax and pull it back. That piezoelectric dance turns pressure into current and current back into pressure. Put those materials in a cavity with the right dimensions and you get standing waves, tones that amplify because the walls agree with them. In Egypt, limestone and granite. In Alaska, bedrock and ice. Ice isn't dead. As a dielectric, it stores charge and slows fields enough to trap energy. A pyramid under ice doesn't suffocate, it couples. Mechanisms stop sounding mystical when you break them into parts. Acoustic chambers, narrow passages, wider rooms shape pressure waves like organ pipes. If you drive them at low frequencies, the whole mass can hum as one body. Magnetic fields modulate that hum, weak currents ride the lattice of crystals. Piezoelectric layers transduce stress into M whispers and back. Now feed the system with ambient power, wind-borne ground noise, telluric currents sluicing through the crust, distant quakes, even auroral surges. The machine harvests what the planet already throws around. Use cases grow from that. Energy storage isn't a battery so much as a resonant bank. Build amplitude and release it in controlled pulses. Seismic dampening becomes plausible. Phase cancel certain frequencies, steal energy from a quake's wavefront, bleed it as heat. Signaling is the one that makes everyone shift. A tuned structure could punch narrowband signatures through earth and sky. Slow, but global. If you wanted to whisper to a partner at the other pole, it's a start. Comparisons sharpen motive. Giza's granite is rich in quartz. Those blocks in the King's Chamber aren't just pretty, they are piezo factories. The so-called air shafts aligned to stars, yes, but they're also waveguides. Now transplant the idea north. Alaskan bedrock holds granites and metamorphic layers with piezo capacity. Add hundreds of meters of ice as a cladding that reflects and shapes fields, a cold amplifier that quiets thermal noise. A pyramid here wouldn't be a copy, it would be an upgrade tuned to polar conditions. The aurora, noisy as it is, provides a periodic pump. Every so often the sky itself would help charge the stack. The skeptic lens keeps you honest. Archaeology ties pyramids to ritual and rule, monuments to power, not power plants. Alternative claims often cherry-pick physics, ignore loss, and forget that huge stones crack. All true. The gaps in the wild theories are real, but plausible physics doesn't need perfection to create motive. If even a fraction of the resonance story holds, if shape helps couple ground energy and emit low-frequency signatures, then anyone who found a northern counterpart would test it. They'd want to see what happens when you drive it, and they'd want to make sure nobody else did. A micro-story lives in a knock on a lab wall. A field geologist described wrapping a core from west of Denali with a wrench and hearing a bell tone too clean for fractured rock. It rang like glass, he said, then stopped himself. He emailed the clip to a colleague. The response came from a supervisor: neat resonance, park it. He parked more than the clip, he parked his curiosity. Mechanisms lead to motives. If a buried machine can soak up ground noise, you could use it as a regional stabilizer, dampen tremors, tame microseisms, keep pipelines steadier. If it can store and release, you dream bigger, grid integration at scale, or pulses that ride the Earth to submarines under ice without satellites knowing. If it can signal, you ask who was listening first. That's the line that keeps creeping back: who was here first? Indigenous accounts talk about sky holes, underground hums, and forbidden mountains. Those errant blueprints, they're warnings. If a prior culture or a non-human presence set a device in the crust and left it to sleep, then waking it without permission invites a response. What kind of response depends on what it is: a beacon, a break, a lock on something worse. Each answer points to a different kind of danger. So the impact is twofold. Plausible physics gives operators a reason to lock down Alaska and probe edges until the geometry gives up its math. Cultural memory gives them a reason to do it quietly, because if the machine's purpose isn't ours, flipping switches in the dark risks more than a headline. In rooms without windows, people chose the safest verb they had: contain. And yet the questions only get louder the closer you stand to the hum. If it functions, you test. If it tests back, you rethink who's in charge.